Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the fuel system on a Yamaha Star 650 motorcycle. From the gas tank, which isn't on this bike right now, all the way to the hose that makes its way into the carburetors. We're going to be able to diagnose some common issues within this fuel system, replace parts as necessary, and save you some money by not needlessly replacing parts or going to a repair shop to have them do work that you could be doing for yourself. So let's get started. And it's not necessary to remove the tank for a lot of what I'm doing here. It happens to be because I'm doing other work and it's much easier to demonstrate a lot of this with the tank removed, and that's why. This project could be divided into two categories. We could have a plumbing problem, or we could have an electrical problem. When we start off at the tank, you would have a hose connected right here coming off the tank, and this would be making its way around to the fuel filter. Immediately, we could ask ourselves, if this is placed in the off position, if you remove the hose from here, is any fuel leaking out? Because if fuel is leaking out, then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to look at replacing the system in here that has the gaskets and what have you, for ensuring that everything operates correctly in this fuel shutoff valve. I have a video for doing this. I'll post that up here. This also may point towards corruption in the gas tank as well. So you have the opportunity within that video. You could remove this, replace the stuff with the rebuild kit, flush out this tank, get rid of any old gas, get rid of any debris in the tank, and start off anew right from the beginning. If this is not an issue with regard to it leaking on off, you could then see and obviously set up a hose here and collect back into another fuel can. You could fill up the tank with gas. You could turn it to the on position, the reserve position, and make sure the fuel is flowing nicely from here if you're dealing with a situation where the tank is okay. And if you're going that route, you could see right here that if you were cleaning out a tank full of garbage, chances are the fuel filter is corrupt too. You just pull off the clips right here, pull out the filter from this rubber mount, slide a new filter in, and you're done. Just follow the directions with regard to the arrow that points which direction the filter is supposed to go in. Pop the filter right back on. This brings me to the next step in a situation where the pump works but the system was found to be fouled. This would be the purging or flushing of the entire system as a whole. And so with purging the system, I'll explain. Let's pretend that you had a tank that was corrupt, it was filled with garbage. You've now cleaned out that tank, you've replaced the filter, all the gas that you're going to put in is now clean. You've rebuilt the carburetor, you've installed it. Everything is good. But all the gas that's past the filter and into the pump and back out of the pump and through the line and up to the carburetor is old gas that's filled with moisture and dirt and most likely gas rot. Now, if you go and run the motorcycle, all it's going to do is push all of that nasty old gas right into your carburetors. You don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect this fuel line from the carb first. Remember, it's critically important that this is done before you run the bike the first time. And I'm either going to put an extension on this hose or I'm going to raise up an appropriate gas can high enough that this hose can reach into a collecting can. We can see I've set it up here so it could be displayed on the camera. We can see now that the line going into the carb is now in a gas can. And what I'm going to do, in my case, I'm going to fill the intake funnel. In anybody else's case, it would simply be the new fresh gas in the gas tank. I'm going to fill up the fuel. Now, in the initial priming of the pump, when the bike is turned on, first I'm going to turn on the key, which will not affect the pump. And now when I turn on the run switch, we'll see what happens. Here we go. And what we did was we just pushed the old gas through with fresh gas, though when we do this, it only primes the pump for a couple of seconds. So what we need to do is shut off the switch and make sure there's enough available fuel and then run it again. So I'll do that now. I filled up my funnel. Do this several times until the fuel coming through here looks clear and you've purged the entire fuel system. Now reconnected, only new and fresh fuel will be introduced into the bowls of the carbs the first time you turn on this bike. But what if we heard all those noises when we hit that switch? We had fuel, but we still didn't see any fuel coming out of that hose into the gas can. Well, you're gonna have to inspect that fuel filter. Did you change the fuel filter? Run gas directly through the fuel filter, see if it comes out one side through to the other. See if there's a blockage there. There may be a blockage through the fuel pump, that end hose. This is also possible. The other possibility, of course, is the fuel pump is broken and needs to be replaced. It may be mechanically spinning, but it's not pumping anything. But we need to listen to those sounds too, because they were important. That ticking sound. Are you getting that when you turn the key? What happens when you hit the button? Do you hear the fuel pump? There's actually quite a bit going on with the fuel pump circuit, and it starts down here under this cover. We need to pay particular attention to these fuses right here. And while we should always be checking all of the fuses, we need to pay particular attention to the ignition fuse, the igniter fuse that's located in this box. Take them out, test them, make sure they read okay. If you heard the clicking up top and the pump made noise, there's a good chance that those fuses are okay. If not, especially if nothing happened with the turning of the key, the main fuse could be suspect. So check here and all these here. All of them should be good. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that if you had a system like this with some sort of auxiliary tank and a filter and a hose, and you wanted to check the health of your entire electrical system without the fuel pump, you could simply bypass it and plug that hose directly into the carbs for the purpose of testing, as is set up here. I have fuel going into the carburetors. So all I need to do is simply run the bike. It would make sure the ignition's working, the igniter's working, all the electrical systems, the neutral switch, the kickstand switch, the main switch, the relays, everything is going to be running in order for this bike to turn on, would rule out all of those electrical possibilities. So let's just do that. Got my choke on. Everything seems to be working fine. This bike could have functioned without a fuel pump in this scenario, so it would have ruled out every other problem right there. I'm going to get at the fuel pump by removing this side cover here. I'm going to remove this rubber tank bracket. And there's a screw up front that I've removed. Also have highway bars on this bike, so it's a little bit different. But I just pulled out that screw with a 10 mil. Unsnap the cover and take it off. This exposes tucked in a single connection for the fuel pump. This is a 2-wire connection. We can see on the fuel pump side here are blue, black, and black. I'm going to disconnect that now. Resistance on the pump should be between 1.6 and 2.2 ohms. I have 0.5 ohms of resistance between the cables. This brings us to 1.9. That shows us to be good. If this was open or way out of spec or zero, this pump would be garbage and need be replaced. I'm measuring off the leads now, going to the pump, and I'm going to turn the key. And I can see 13 volts going to the pump, and then it should cut off after a time. We saw that happen. That would be the priming. That shows that voltage is going to the pump. Alternately, you could ground the negative probe and just put the positive probe on the blue-black cable and turn on the bike to get the same effect. And it shuts off. That's good electric to the fuel pump. If you're getting that right there, you have no electrical problems whatsoever to the fuel pump. The fuel pump itself is held onto a metal bracket, very much similar to the fuel filter. A rubber holder is wrapped around it like this, and then metal extensions come through that bracket and it's pushed down into it and locks into place. We're going to be removing these bracket screws on both sides. With the screws removed on both sides, the bracket pulls forward and drops from the rear pin. Sits just like this, forward of the carburetor. This whole bracket could then be pulled forward with the ignition and the fuel filter connected to it. We can see that the fuel filter is held on by this rubber mount that holds it into these extensions that come off that bracket. It could then be lifted off of the bracket and pulled out as a whole unit just like this. Bench testing, cleaning, replacement, or whatever can be done just like this. There's no further breakdown of the fuel pump beyond this method. New installation would be right into this rubber bracket and onto these hoses. So I hope you found this video on the troubleshooting and repair of the Star 650 fuel system informative and helpful and entertaining. Hit that like button below, helps me a lot. Hit subscribe and the bell for more episodes. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Would you like to reply?